Thank you for listening to this Podcast One production, available on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One.
Welcome into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm Tim Dennis in for Dave Schrader. He's off for the day. We got an exciting program, and we'll get to it here in just a moment. Want to remind you about a couple of things here on the docket. Check out darknessradio.com for all kinds of sorts of things, especially darkness events, and where you can check out Dave and I and where we'll be around the country. Lots of great events coming up in the new year, including Phenomenology out there in near, it's not necessarily in Gettysburg, but around Gettysburg. Check out darknessevents.com to see where that is. There's a banner there. There's some specials as far as the event itself and admission to the event. Click on the banner that says Phenomenology. Dave and I will be at Phenomenology this year. It's a great event. Lots of great speakers and lots of great people from the TV world that you can see there as far as paranormal celebrities. Go to darknessevents.com. Click on that banner, Phenomenology, and join us out there in Pennsylvania in March. That's important there. Also, Chris Jericho's Rock and Wrestling Rager at Sea is taking off here. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's a little over a month now. For $99, you can still get on the waiting list to see if you can set sail with us on the open seas. Dave and I are your paranormal experts. I say that in quotes. There's no such thing as a paranormal expert, I know. But we're your paranormal experts in quotes out there on the seas. We'll be setting sail through the Bermuda Triangle and having a good time with Chris Jericho and AEW Wrestling. It's going to be a blast, folks. If you weren't with us last year, we had an absolute fantastic time. 5 days out on the open seas. We set sail from Miami. We go through the Bahamas, and it is amazing. Believe it or not, Ric Flair is going to be with us. The Nature Boy himself, and some of the great guys, the legends from WCW and WWE are going to be with us, as well as the guys from AEW. And if you have not tuned into AEW on TNT on Wednesday nights, man, are you missing out. I'm telling you. Check your local listings for AEW on TNT. And for more details as well, check out Talk is Jericho as well. I'm telling you, ChrisJerichoCruise.com, or just go to darknessevents.com, click on the banner. Get on the waiting list. $99. You got to experience it. It's a once in a lifetime vacation. You will have the time of your life. I know, just between you, me, and the fence post, when Dave got on this cruise, I think he was a little skeptical. And once he came off this cruise, he had the time of his life. He was giddy as a school kid. I'm just telling you. You too can join us and have a great time. Chris Jericho's Rock and Wrestling Rager at Sea, Part 2. Have a little bit of the bubbly with us when we go on this cruise. It'll be great. Let's get to our show today, shall we? It's an exciting show today. We're going to talk today about a subject that is a little interesting, a little titillating, and very spiritual. God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry. Reverend Sean Whittington is our guest. And he's got a book out there called God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry. And Sean is based in Las Vegas, Nevada. And he's out there with his wife, Sharon. And the two of them together form a very interesting ministry. You would think Las Vegas would be ripe for exorcisms and ripe for deliverances. And it certainly is. Sean has a website called ghost-b-gone.biz that you can visit. He operates his ministry out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and Reverend Sean is a devout Catholic, ordained and a trained registered exorcism and deliverance minister. His wife, Sharon, is a near-death experience survivor. We'll talk a little bit about that during the show as well. A certified Stephen minister through her Lutheran faith, and a sensitive and intuitive. Both have suffered and survived severe demonic attacks. They are a husband and wife ghost-busting team as well. And again, they're based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, with over 40 years combined experience. The team is fully equipped to perform a thorough paranormal investigation if needed. But GhostBegone.biz, the ministry strives to go one step further than just ghost hunting. They specialize in getting rid of that extra unwanted guest in your home. Let's welcome to Beyond the Darkness, Reverend Sean Whittington. Good evening, Sean. How are you?
Jim, how are you, sir?
Doing very well. Before we start the program, let's do something that we don't do on the show, but I'm more than welcome to do. You requested that we do a prayer over our audience and over the show.
Yes, I know that the subject matter may get a little dark, and you never know what's lurking around and listening and trying to disrupt our discussion because of the subject matter. So if you're willing, I would like to do just a very quick prayer of protection over all of us.
Absolutely.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Under thy protection we seek refuge. O Holy Mother of God, despise not our prayers in our needs, but save us always from all danger. O glorious and blessed Virgin, amen. Holy Mary, Queen of Martyrs, pray for us. Amen.
Amen. Appreciate that. Reverend Sean, it's a subject that titillates, I think, a lot of people in a bizarre way. And I think the first question I'm going to throw out there to you is why? Why are people titillated by this subject? Because when you watch a lot of paranormal television, or when people tune into paranormal television, the first thing that draws them, I think, is not so much the friendly ghost that hangs out in a home, but it's the malevolent one. It's the one that is haunting a home or causing harm or spiritual warfare. Why is it the evil spirit that gets the grease, so to speak?
Well, you know the old saying, everybody likes a good scare. I think there's a little bit of that to that, but more so, I think people are just kind of, over the past, I want to say at least 15 years, I know it goes much further back than that, especially a year like we've just recently had, where we've just been inundated with all of these paranormal reality TV shows. I think just the run-of-the-mill haunt and ghost story might be a little old hat or getting long on the tooth for some people. And I think the spiritual warfare, exorcism, you think back to movies like The Exorcist and a lot of other very well-made movies about demonic possession that have been made over the years since The Exorcist. I think it just is the unknown. The big difference between, ghosts and demons is you can almost, and I, speaking for myself, I do live in a haunted home. You can kind of almost live with them. But, the demonic is a completely different story. They do have rules that they play by. Some of us know them, some of us don't. They don't change much, but it's just the unknown, and usually dealing with the demonic, it's a matter of life and death, as opposed to just having Uncle Tom or Aunt Betty that are hanging around, watching over the house and the family and aren't ready to cross over yet, but have passed on. I think that's the difference there. People like the real good scare, and when it comes to the demonic, they know that can be, most people that have had a run-in with that in their lives, usually their stories are, for lack of a better term, quite horrific.
You're going to think this is an odd question, but I know a lot of people as you pointed out, tune into paranormal television, or they tune into, or they go to the movies for that quick scare. As a reverend yourself, and even your wife as a minister, do you two go out to the movies, or do you sit down and watch paranormal television yourself?
You know, I've been a Ghostbuster since I was very young. So there's many. I just became ordained 6-7 years ago. Mm-hmm. I probably didn't run into my first legitimate malevolent demonic case till shortly after I met my wife, and we met, fell in love, and got married about 17 years ago. So now there's a lot of years there of just being, you know, a Ghostbuster, a ghost hunter, paranormal investigator, and never really ran into anything that dark or that malevolent. So it's we like to, you know, it's especially being, she's a sensitive intuitive. I'm a bit sensitive and quite the intuitive also. Our friends tend to keep us kind of at, you know, arm's distance because, you know, it's not for everybody what we do. Our families and close friends love us, but it can be a little scary to be around us at times because we do work a lot of cases. But as far as the TV shows go, I like them. You know, I don't like them as much as I used to. Mm-hmm. I would rather be out there. You know, I get a little jealous sometimes watching the TV shows because I don't travel well and I don't get out much other than my day job and working cases. But I watch some of these shows and I get jealous because I wish I was out there with those teams doing that, investigating those great locations and helping some of those people that are truly in need of some deliverance, or to get, you know, a very angry, unwanted guest that they need to get out of their house, out of their home for them. So I don't watch them as much as I used to, but I still do like them. If the shows are done well, some of the shows, in my humble opinion, aren't done real well. A lot of them can be just the same old thing. But movies, same thing. If the movies, yeah, we go out, you know, catch a good movie like that. And just between, I say between you and me, but we've got, you know, all of these people that are listening tonight. The movies can be a little over the top, a little over dramatic. Of course, I've seen some movies on the demonic and demonic possession, and there are some things in there that are that I've seen happen and that are true. But most of the time, it's really over the top and sensationalized, over-sensationalized. And my wife and I will kind of give each other that look during the movie, like, you know, well, that doesn't happen, but that, you know, it's good for the movie, so to speak.
I'm going to hold that point for later on in the program. We'll talk a little bit about that and what's real and what's fabricated as far as Hollywood and what's real life. We'll hold on to that for later. But let me ask you this. I want to get to the paranormal TV side of things and what you think about certain things about paranormal TV as opposed to real life and why you think. I'm going to try and phrase this in a palatable way for you. And why you think it wouldn't lend to a successful formula, because you see a lot of television shows where a ghost hunting group will go in and they claim they help the family that's there, although we don't see I guess you could say we don't see the palatable results on screen. We take the word of the production company that the help has been ministered there. Although there are very few where we actually see, let's just say, holy men and women come in and do the job. I can think of, like, say, Paranormal State, where a good friend of ours, Father Andrew Calder, was brought in to perform an exorcism. I can only think of a handful of times, or like, say, John Zaffis was brought in to do some form of exorcism work. I can only think of a handful of times where someone was brought in to intervene and do some sort of exorcism work. I can't think of a regular, or even Ralph Sarchie. I think Ralph Sarchie might have had some deliverance work done on his show. But it's not a regular focus of a paranormal television show. And I want to get your opinion as to why. Does it not make good television?
I think it's, for many people, it's unless it's someone is legitimately full-blown demonically possessed and there's going to be an actual exorcism performed, I think anything short of that is a little anticlimactic, probably. I'm with you. I doubt that many times they say the help's coming, but I've talked to a lot of people that have been on shows like that had needed help, and then the help never did come. So that's the sad part about that. It's big business. A lot of shows I watch, and I know a lot of the people that are on a lot of these shows, and I can tell that they're not being themselves, that they're possibly being something that the producer's pushing them to be like on camera. And I'll give you an example. I'm not going to name the gentleman. A good friend of mine, him and his wife have lived in probably one of the most notoriously haunted locations in the South. It's an antique shop, and they live there too, along with it being an antique shop. And this dates back to long before even the Civil War times. And the place is just infested with spirit. And they have been approached at one time or another by, a dozen or so production companies wanting to film an episode or two of their paranormal reality TV show there. Mm-hmm. And almost every single contract had a part in the contract that stated for them to sign away that things could be faked. They could add special effects. They could, twist the truth a little bit. They could over sensationalize something, or just downright fake some evidence. And God bless my friend. He, that's not his makeup. That's not what he's about. He turned down every single offer because he didn't want that stigma to be a part of him or his wife or their location. I fear that happens a lot more than we know. And it is, bottom line, it is all entertainment. But things are a lot different, I believe, in the real world than they are on they call them reality TV shows, but I do think there's a lot about them that's just entertainment.
Understandable. Let's switch tracks here, and let's get to your beginnings when it comes to the paranormal, and your beginnings in general when it comes to spirituality. I want to start first of all with your spiritual makeup into your first paranormal beginnings. We stated in your bio that you were brought up Catholic, as was I. I guess we can both connect on that level. And I find it fascinating when I talk to a fellow Catholic as to, I don't want to say that there's never a falling out with the Catholic Church. I think you kind of go your separate way, so to speak, and you find other things that fit your spirituality. I think there's one thing or another that kind of you go, well, I agree with most of it, but there's this here where we kind of part ways with the Catholic Church, but the spirituality is mostly agreeable. With you, I guess I'm not going to get that personal as to ask you where you separated with the Catholic Church, but where was it that you decided that maybe it just wasn't for you?
Do you want the abridged version?
Yeah,
or
sure.
Do we have time for me to just lay it on you?
Well, you can lay it on me if you want, but the abridged version is fine if you want to give that. Sure.
Well, both my parents are in heaven now, and if my mother, who's probably watching me right now, heard that I was separated from the Catholic Church, she'd roll over in her grave and manifest right in front of me and probably give me a good, honk on the noggin or slap me silly. I haven't really separated from the church. I was baptized Catholic. I'm still a Catholic. I still go to confession, attend Mass, receive Holy Communion. I am ordained to a Christian university, and the reason why that is, and it just kind of fell in my lap, my wife and I worked a very dark case, and we had something very ugly follow us home and pretty much took residence up in our house here for about 8 weeks. And I had no clue how to battle it. I hadn't gone through any training as far as spiritual warfare when my wife and I were just, ghost hunters, paranormal investigators, trying to help people where we could. And in the process of me reaching out into the paranormal community for help, and I finally did meet some people that helped me. You and I probably wouldn't be having this discussion if I didn't find the right help, but I've had some people that took me under their wing and instructed me and helped me step by step how to fight this thing and get it out of my home. Well, during that process, they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and they asked me if I wanted to continue on in the training, and which I did. I took a course after that. I wanted to be able to, battle anytime if it ever happened again in my life, or my wife and I, or especially my wife, ever came under attack again, and hers was, she's lucky to still be here with us. I wanted to be able to battle back. So it just so happens they are the Christian faith, that Agape Christian University and the American Association of Exorcists are Christian-based organizations. So that's just how I became an ordained Reverend exorcism deliverance minister through a Christian university. But I am still Catholic, so I haven't separated from that church. But that's just the way things worked out. But I had been seeing spirit since I was very young, and I had no one to confide in but my mother. And I found out many, many years later that my mother, was also very sensitive and saw spirit too. And she told me, I don't know how she knew this. I know now, but then she told me, you're going to see a lot of spirit in your life. Don't be afraid of them. They're just people that don't have a body any longer. And if someone appears to you, ask it what it needs, if it needs help or if it needs to pass a message on to you. And if you can help it, fine. If you can't, be honest with the spirit and tell it that you cannot help it and for it to please stop bothering you and to move on. And so it started there, and I remember spending the night at my sister's. I have an older sister, 8 years older than me, and one 10 years older than me, and they were in college at the time, and they had me come over and sleep there because my parents were going out. They were babysitting me. They happened to live in a haunted home. So that was my first up-close and personal contact with another spirit where I actually helped that spirit cross over. And so then from that point on, it was just in the cards for me to continue doing that. And so there's a lot of years behind me as far as just being a paranormal investigator and trying to help people. But I hid that from a lot of friends because I really feared. I really feared growing up that they would think I was crazy and I wouldn't have any friends. So it probably wasn't until I went in the Navy when I was 20. It probably wasn't until after I got out of the Navy and really started working paranormal cases, hardcore paranormal cases, that I came out with the fact that I had been seeing spirits most of my life. And I trace everything back. I'm a fanatic about heritage and lineage and your ancestors and all that. And, come to find out that my father is, a descendant from a long line of warriors for Christ, and my mother, she was Brazilian. She was also a descendant from a long line of devoutly Catholic but extremely spiritual people. So it was in the DNA. And then, I had to talk with my parents one night, and from that talk, I truly believed in my heart of hearts now that I was actually created to be on this path that I'm on today. I didn't know that through my younger years growing up, but looking back on what they told me when I was a young man to where I'm at today, I truly believe that I was actually created to be doing the work I'm doing now.
Let me ask you this, Reverend Sean. There's a couple of points I want to hit here. One is the fact that you start to see these spirits. I take it that your mother comes to you and says, "Now you're going to see these spirits." You've already said you can't share this with your friends because obviously you don't want them to think you're crazy. But you also can't come out and share this with your church either, because in your church it's forbidden. So really, you can talk to your mother about this, but you can't share it with anyone else, correct? I mean,
no, just close family. You're absolutely right. You're caught between a rock and a hard spot. You're really there's times where you just totally feel like you're on your own. I remember like it was yesterday. I'm a young kid. When you're really young, I forget what grade I'm in, but you get out of school early and you come home, your mother always feeds you a nice big lunch, and then you take a nap. Mm-hmm. Naps were big for me when I was a little kid. I was a little high-strung, and they were always trying to calm me down. Mm-hmm. But my mom used to say, listen, you're going to, when we take this nap, get a nice big firm handful of my hair and hold on to it and don't let go, and I'm going to get a nice firm hold of your leg. And I'm not going to let go, so none of these things that you see can take you when we're trying to take a nap. And I don't know if there was something there that she was trying to hide from me and not be honest with me, because if they were just run-of-the-mill, spirits and visitation or, passing through or what have you, what was there to be so scared of? Or maybe she was just, I'm just a young kid, I'm going to be scared regardless. Maybe she was just trying to not so much hide something from me, but just, calm me down during times when she felt that I was having some issues that were pretty much blowing my mind. Because when you're a kid, you can't really wrap your mind around those kinds of things. But you're absolutely right. The only people I could really confide into were my older sisters and my mom and dad.
So no one's really even coaching you through this when you're seeing these spirits. You're just being restrained when you do see them.
Correct.
That's got to be incredibly scary.
Oh, I was. Yeah, it was scary. It was very scary, and sometimes I laugh now because I go on investigations where sometimes I drive up to a home. Let's say a priest that I know might be working an alleged demonic case, and he'll reach out to me for help. And I don't know what he saw or felt or has already gone through before I got there. But sometimes I'll drive up to these homes, and the priest is outside waiting for me, and he'll just give me a brief rundown on what's happening and let me take it from there. Doesn't even want to go back in. And my wife, many times, and other close people that I trust to come along and be part of a paranormal team and help me with this case or an investigation, they say something different comes over me when I'm on these cases. And it's almost like I'm fearless. And I remember back at a time when I was so not that. And I think it was probably fighting for my wife's life during her attack probably was the turning point for me there, and where I really changed.
Let me ask you this, because there comes a time when you're a youngster where you decide you're either going to deal with what's in front of you or you're going to shut down. And the only example I can think of is when a child's in an abusive situation, they either take what's in front of them and they get through it, or they shut down. If you're in a situation where you're dealing with spirits, like with you, you continued to deal with the spirits and you got through it. You learned how to deal with it while you were being restrained, and continued to deal with spirits and went through it through your adult life. As a child, you had the option to shut down. You could have mentally shut it off. You could have shut down. Why do you feel you didn't shut down?
I don't know. I just know that I was that. I must have had a deep-seated passion for it, because it wasn't much longer after that. I was that weird kid riding around the neighborhood and on my Schwinn with the little metal basket on the handlebars. And I remember having an old, my father worked for an electronics company and bought me a really cool small reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I had one of those, and I had, a couple of old Polaroid cameras where the film used to pop out right in front and develop right there in front of your eyes. And I used to drive around on my bike to all these old abandoned farmhouses and cabins and what have you that I would see in the Topanga. I grew up in Southern California, so I would go on these bike rides and these hikes in the Topanga Canyon or Malibu Canyon and find these locations and just explore them. Mm-hmm. And so it just was a passion that was there. I didn't find that as scary. I guess I just got used to it. I didn't find that as scary as being home and feeling like I was being harassed by spirit. But I think I eventually got used to it, and then I think there was already a passion, a deep-seated passion there for that. And like I said earlier, looking back on many things that my parents had told me, I believe I was created to be on this path. So I think that all plays into that.
It's interesting that you say you're created to be on this path. At what point do you realize, other than doing the ancestry and tracking this back and realizing that this gift is instilled in your family, what other evidence is presented that makes you think that you're created to be on this path?
Well, my father was a 25-year-plus retired Master Chief from the United States Navy, part of the greatest generation. Mm-hmm. He served in World War II, Korea, Purple Heart recipient, finished his career in naval intelligence, so a very credible individual. But he was overseas in the Philippines when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And all naval personnel were ordered to get off the island because they knew the Japanese was going to invade the Philippines next. Several hours out at sea, his ship came under attack and was sunk. And it was probably midday on the day that they got attacked that he went into the water. He was one of the last people. He was a radio man, so he's sending out their coordinates, the SOS, what have you. He's one of the last people to get off the ship, and he's just, bobbing up and down in the water the rest of that day and all night long, hanging onto a piece of wood or gangplank, if you will. And by the time morning came around, the hero of the story was the captain on the one ship that came back to get them, because all naval vessels were ordered not to go back for survivors because there was just too much enemy infested in the area. But this one captain, he ignored his orders and he went back. And so my father was violently ill by morning, because you're bobbing up and down in this water, probably accidentally drinking in some of the salt water, and maybe there's gasoline and oil and God knows what else floating around in the water also. So by morning he was violently ill, and they heard a ship coming and they thought it was the Japanese, and there was a big lot of fog. Well, when the fog cleared, just as the sun was coming up, they noticed there was a naval vessel. And so they started taking survivors aboard. My father, he was too weak to get there. He was dog paddling and kicking and trying to get there, but he was almost there. He heard over the loudspeakers, prepare to get underway. And he heard then kick the engines on. He found a piece of rope attached to the ship that was floating in the water, and he decided, well, they're going to drag me back dead, but they're not going to leave me here. So he wrapped every which way he could, he wrapped this rope around him, and he actually felt starting to be pulled through the water, and he heard a very deep voice say, there's one more over the side. And he recalled looking up, and a very large, muscular sailor jumped over the side of the ship, and while hanging on to the ship with one arm, reached down, grabbed my father by the scruff of the neck, threw him onto the deck of the ship. Well, when my father landed, he pretty much passed out, probably for the next 24-plus hours or so, woke up with a little makeshift tent over him and a couple of corpsmen working on him. And he scoured that ship, front to back, side to side, every deck, looking for this sailor who saved his life so he could thank him. And he couldn't find this sailor, and he couldn't find anybody on the ship that even knew of a sailor that fit that description. And he couldn't even find a sailor on that ship that saw the incident. It was like one moment my father wasn't there, the next moment he was there on the deck. So my father spent his whole life telling that story whenever he had an opportunity to tell it, and he was thoroughly convinced that it was his guardian angel that saved him. So now fast forward, he meets my mother in Brazil. They have my two older sisters. They moved back to the States. And my father goes back out to sea again. For what I'm not sure. You know, I was in the Navy too. You go out to sea for a number of reasons, play war games, what have you. But he had returned from being overseas, and he was dying. He had contracted spinal meningitis and encephalitis, among other things. At that time, there was no cure for that stuff. And my mother received a phone call from the base doctor saying, you need to come and see your husband now if you want to see him alive again, because we don't expect him to live till morning. Well, on her way to the base hospital, she stopped at the church, went in there, and she petitioned to St. Jude to petition for her on her behalf to God to please save my father's life, spare his life, if you will. And if he did that, she would do two things. One, she wasn't supposed to have any more kids because the birth of my second oldest sister was so difficult that she was advised not to have any more children, that her and or the child might not make it. So there was no other children planned in their future. She also said that I will fall on my hands and knees from that day forward whenever I go to church. Well, she went to the hospital. My father was in a coma, and she fell asleep at his bedside. She woke up that morning. My dad's sitting up in bed, totally normal, and he asks my mom, Edith, what am I doing strapped down to this hospital bed? So she screams, and all the doctors and nurses come running in. They ran every test imaginable, and they couldn't find any traces of any of the diseases left in his body. So my mom kept her word until she was too old and physically unable to do it. Every time she went to church, she did it on her hands and knees, and she did have another child. Ta-da! Yours truly. And so I didn't really grasp the importance of that story until later in life. That, you know, my mom used to say, one day you're going to do something great for God. I don't know if she knew what that was, but I think now I'm doing that. And so it's the most important thing to me right now is to continue doing exactly what I'm doing. Wow.
That's amazing. That's pretty cool. That's very, very cool.
It is very cool. And I'm glad I got through that story without getting too emotional, because that's a little embarrassing.
No, there's nothing embarrassing about that at all, my friend. Not at all. Not at all.
I did it.
That's very, very cool. Well, I think at that point, let's take a break. We'll take a break. We'll regroup. When we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about how you met your lovely wife, Sharon, and a little bit about her experiences. She's a near-death experiencer. Let's talk a little bit about her. And when we come back, we'll talk about how you got into paranormal investigating and how we ended up forming this ministry. When we come back, we'll have more with Reverend Sean Whittington. Sean, tell them a little bit about, you also have a podcast out there as well, and a radio program. Tell them where they can catch your podcast and the radio program as well.
The podcast is Reverend Sean Whittington's Paranormal Ministry, and it's simulcast on both the spiritrealm.net and the Spirit Realm Network Facebook Live page at 5 p.m. Pacific. 8 p.m. Eastern for 1 hour every Sunday. And it's actually televised live from my office here. And like I said earlier, I do live in a haunted house. So you never know what you might see behind me while I'm doing my live broadcast. And I bring guests on, just like you and I are talking. Mm-hmm. And the other show, I started that in October of this year. But I just celebrated my 4-year anniversary with Vegas Supernatural, which is Monday nights, and that's just a live radio show that I do on KCORradio.com Mondays at 5 p.m. Pacific, and that's for 2 hours. Pretty much the same format. I bring on a guest, and we talk about all things paranormal for a couple of hours. And both shows we take call-ins and have a chat line and all that good stuff.
All right, and the website is ghost-b-gone.biz. That's the letter B, ghost-b-gone.biz. Check it out during the break. When we come back, more with the Reverend Sean Whittington when we return on the best in Paranormal Talk Radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. You know what's a sneaky good holiday gift? Super comfortable Bombas socks. Most people don't ask for socks, but that's just because they haven't worn Bombas. Let me tell you about Bombas socks. I have a bunch of diabetic socks in my collection, although I'm slowly phasing them out, and I'm using Bombas because they don't bind like regular socks. They have nice, loose fitting, so you don't get like the little lines in your legs, and they don't cut off circulation, and they work just as well as diabetic socks, if not better than diabetic socks. So I'm slowly replacing my diabetic socks with Bombas socks. And did you know that socks are the #1 most requested item in homeless shelters? It's true. Bombas socks were created to change that. For every pair that you buy, Bombas donates a pair to someone in need. And we here at Beyond the Darkness love that because we love to give back to our communities, and so does Bombas. So we love to support Bombas as well. Bombas socks are soft, like made with the softest cotton in the world soft, and that's wonderful as well. They're built with extra cushioning, so whether you're walking the dog, chilling at home, or saving the world, you'll be comfortable. Bombas socks provide support in places you didn't even know you needed it, like your arches. Each sock is built with a special arch support system that's not too tight. It's more like a nice hug for your foot, just a little nice, just like that. Ever notice that annoying toe seam most socks have? That little ridge on the top? Well, Bombas got rid of it. Gone. So they're smooth across the top of your foot. And it's just nice and comfy. You do a lot of different things, so Bombas made a lot of different socks. You got your dress socks for work. You got your performance socks for working out. And limited edition holiday socks, so you can show yourself off at the holidays in front of the family. They even have a line of merino wool socks, and they're like magic. Soft, warm, naturally moisture-wicking, and never itchy or rough because, you know, wool socks tend to get that way. And you know that person who's just a gift enigma, completely impossible to shop for? We all have one in our family, or even we all have one in our extended family or friends. Well, Bombas is the gift even that person will love. Everybody will. You want to get them a pair of Bombas socks. If you want to give someone a perfectly nice gift, give them a candle. If you want to be a holiday gift-giving ninja, you got to give them Bombas. Go to bombas.com/darkness today. Get 20% off your first purchase by doing so. Bombas.com/darkness today. That's BOMBAS.com/darkness. Bombas.com/darkness. Get your 20% off discount with your first purchase. Bombas.com/darkness today. 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/darkness. Have you guys had a chance to check out Spike's Car Radio? If not, you need to check it out and catch up on some of his awesome interviews. In the past few weeks, Spike has talked with Matt Damon and Christian Bale from Ford vs. Ferrari, Kim Coates and William Fichtner. So head on over to Spike's feed and take a listen. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe to Spike's Car Radio so you can get new episodes every week on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One.
Beyond the darkness.
Welcome back to the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm Tim Dennis in for Dave Schrader, who has the day off today. Our guest is Reverend Sean Whittington, and the website is ghost-b-gone.biz. Sean is, or the Reverend Sean, I should give him proper respect here, probably give him his propers, is not only a Ghostbuster and a paranormal investigator, but has a spiritual warfare ministry out of Las Vegas, Nevada. You can check out more at that website. Has his own podcast and radio show as well. We'll talk more about that here during the program. Before the break, we were talking a bit about Sean's upbringing and about his life before he got into paranormal investigation. And Sean, I wanted to continue a little bit about how you got. We were talking a little bit about how you kind of manifested your abilities to see spirit. I want to talk a little bit now about how you turn those abilities to see spirit into actually helping people in getting into the field of paranormal investigation. And what was it that kind of turned the corner for you to realize that, you know what, I really do need to do something with this ability to see spirit and help others? What was it that made you realize that paranormal investigation was a thing and that I should go out and actually help people?
You know, it's a funny story. I did have support from my mother, mm-hmm. who must have seen things in me that I didn't see in myself, and my older sisters. And so they encouraged that. But that first, I call it a paranormal case, and it wasn't really, but, I confronted the spirit that was in the home that my sisters were renting when they were in college. And I convinced this spirit of this young lady to cross over to the light. But after that, a couple of cases that came across, my path that I worked, it was just wonderful to see how you give a person their life back. Mm-hmm. Because people that aren't used to it and are being haunted for whatever reason, if it's a spirit that's earthbound or trapped at that location, or following them around in attachment, or just an ancestor in visitation, if people aren't used to that, it's their life is turned upside down. It doesn't even have to be anything remotely like a demonic attack or a malevolent spirit in the home, but it just, freaks the average person out. So it's a lot simpler than people think. I don't have any magic powers. I just put my arm around people, help them draw their line in the sand and make a stand, and push back, and learn not to be afraid to push back, and that they can dictate to spirit how they want their life to be. They can tell the spirit, "You're not wanted here. You're upsetting my family. You're upsetting me. You're upsetting, the flow of things here. You're dead. You need to go on to where dead people go, whether it's the light or just off somewhere else. I don't care where that is, but you're not welcome here." It's just as simple as that. Teaching people how to take their own life back. And unfortunately, a lot of people that have something much more malevolent or darker or, God forbid, demonic in their home. The sad thing about what I do, and it happens more than I'd like to admit, is people reach out to you, and you would think they're at rock bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and they may even tell you they're at rock bottom. But when you get there to try to help them, you just can't get them totally on board with what you need them to do to help you help them. So many times you kind of have to know when to say when and cut them loose. That's probably still one of the hardest things that I have to deal with, having to do that, because I feel like when you do let somebody go, refer them to another team or cut them loose, you feel a little bit like a failure. Like if you were really truly meant to do this and you knew your stuff, that you would somehow be able to say the things you needed to say to get the person to buy into it. I'm not trying to convert anybody,
right.
but there are some certain things I need from a person, especially if they've got a demon in their home. They need to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I would say 99.9% of the time, I cut somebody loose. Eventually I hear back from them. And then things are so much worse because they've maybe had several other teams come through there and try to help them, and that just made things worse. And allowing this cancer, if you will, spiritual cancer, to continue to fester in their home, it just gets that much more of a hold on the family, and it gets harder and harder to get these things to move on. So that's the hard part about what I do.
So it's almost like wanting to lose the weight but not wanting to diet. Is that a good way of looking at it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just not wanting to put in the work where you need to put in the work.
Absolutely.
I find it interesting too that we get a lot of people who want to listen to shows about exorcism and they want to listen to shows about demons, but just don't throw God into it. I don't want to listen to a show about exorcism and hear about God. Well, you can't have good without evil. The two, they balance. I don't get that part of the formula. Well, don't shove God down my throat. I want to hear about demons and I want to hear about exorcism, but don't shove God down my throat. Well, but they're one and the same. They both exist in the universe, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to hear about one, but you want to hear about the other. Does that make any sense to you?
I ask people sometimes, I can't tell you how many atheists now believe in something when they didn't believe in something if they are confronted by that type of evil. But most people, if they're not Catholic or Christian, I at least say, well, do you believe, you know what you're going through right now, and whatever, are we in agreement that what you're going through is extremely evil and trying to kill you or a family member? If I can get them to at least agree to that, I can say, well, then obviously, do you believe in a greater power of love and light that might not be our creator, but at least something that watches over us? And if you believe in that, then that's what you need to pray to. And I don't care what name you slap on it. Mm-hmm. That's what we need to ask for help from. Because we're not going to get help from the gang that's already trying to kill you. So you have to make a choice here. And sometimes it works out a little bit better that if I don't slap somebody with, the God thing or hit them with too much Catholicism or Christianity. Sometimes I have to come in there and be very non-denominational, but there still are some, and I can sneak in the things they need to do, like the blessed incenses and, sprinkling the holy water and the holy salts around their home, and some prayers that they may like. They're not going to mention, God per se, or Jesus or Mary or the Holy Family or the Holy Spirit, but just some good, wholesome prayers to a higher power of love and light that they need to recite all the time. And mainly just change their life, too. 99.9% of the time, people have done something, and they get mad when I say this to them also. You've done something to draw the attention of these things to make them think that it was okay to attach to you. Knowingly or unknowingly, that's usually the case. So let's try and find out what that is. And it could be simple as drug abuse, alcohol abuse, there's infidelity in the marriage, a number of things. But we have to address that too and find out and change all that. And you better be prepared to, once you change it, stay that way. Once you make the life change and we get things better here, you better, keep the doors and windows shut and locked, because if you let another opening, they never leave. They may get out of the house, but they're going to be outside roaming around watching you all the time. You let them back in. You let your guard down, and you let a window open or let a door open and let another opening occur and let them back in. Then it's just off the charts. Usually it's nothing I can do then, because it's just that much worse. They usually come back 10 times stronger, and things really, really get worse. And I usually have to call in a lot of help, and it's more times than not, usually we're not able to bring closure to that situation.
What happens, Reverend Sean, when you get the answer of, well, nobody lives a perfect life? I mean, something's always going to happen that's going to bring these things back.
And yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And I agree with them. I say, I'm a mere mortal. I sin. I still sin. I will still commit sin till the day I die. But you're the one that's fighting something. This is what you need to do to fight back against this thing that's trying to kill you. So it's your decision. And I let them make the decision. If they're, can't you just spray some holy water around Reverend Sean and say some prayers out loud and do the things I see the priests do on TV, where they do a lot of yelling and screaming and flailing around and make this thing leave? And it's just, sometimes a lot of those shows do us more harm than help us, because it's really not like that.
I want to switch gears here a little bit, and I want to get into another part of your history, and that is how you met your lovely wife Sharon, and how the two of you met, and get a little bit into her history. How did you first meet your wife?
Well, we were actually set up on a blind date, but we didn't know it.
Really?
Neither one of us knew it. Our mutual friend was very secretive about it. She invited us both up to a location to watch another mutual friend of ours perform some music. He's a singer. And she had every intention on introducing the two of us and seeing where it might go. And her and I just hit it right off. But, I'm an open book. Sometimes I'm honest to a fault. And I was honest with her about my passion for the paranormal, and she said, well, what do you know? So am I. I've died before. Oh, really? How'd that go? How'd that work for you? She died she moved out here to Vegas from back east because of her asthma, and she actually died of a severe asthma attack when she was younger and was pronounced dead. And she remembers crossing over and seeing heaven and all her relatives that had passed over before her and all that, and didn't want to come back, and was told it's not your time, and they sent her back. And ever since she came back, she's just had a real sensitivity to spirit. Sees them, feels them. They seem to be attracted to her. I refer to her as my human dowsing rods. I don't think I could work a case without her, although there was a time where I almost decided never to work a case with her again because of a case we worked that resulted in her undergoing a severe demonic attack, which almost took her life. And so there was a time, but she was stubborn and insisted that that's exactly what they want, is to break us up and make it so that separate us and get us by ourselves. We're much stronger as a team, not only here as a family unit and a marriage, but when we go out as a team to help people going through the same thing that we've gone through. We're much stronger as a team, and she was right. Mm-hmm. But it's still, they're like gangsters, and they always go after who you love.
Yep.
So many times it's made perfectly clear to me in no uncertain terms. I can see demons and hear them. And so many times they will tell me exactly what they're going to do to my wife if we don't leave these clients alone and be on our way. And it can be very, very frightening. You have to be able to get beyond that, especially if you're working with a spouse or other family members or people that you just love that are very close to you. These things, like I said, the difference between a ghost and the demonic is a matter of life and death. So that's what you're dealing with. And if you're worried about, it's one thing to worry about yourself, but if you're worried about people that you're close to also, it can be distracting just enough where you let your guard down and you make a wrong move and you make things worse.
I have a question about that vulnerability, but I want to hold it. I want you to tell me a bit about what happened with that demonic attack on Sharon first.
Well, we were stupid, and we went to work a case that was, we know now it was a demonic case, but at the time we went to work it, we weren't sure. And we used a Ouija board and conducted a seance at this location. And I'm fairly convinced now that we opened up some type of door and allowed an attachment to come through and attach to Sharon. And we were driving home. It's always 3 in the morning, isn't it? But it was about 3 in the morning, and we're driving home from this case, and her cell phone rings. And there's no caller ID on that, and she has caller ID. And she goes, that's odd. So it must be the client calling us. We better, things are pretty scary there. I better answer this. So I told her to answer it. Well, there was nobody there. We went home, went to bed, and it started right away. I noticed the difference right away I started having extreme night terrors. And then she started having the night terrors. And then we had a water main break under our master bedroom floor, flooded us out. We started living in sleeping and living in the living room, which we still sleep and live in the living room because we don't want to go back into the other room. And it started manipulating the environment. I would go out to do some gardening or yard work, and these blackbirds that I'd never seen in my life would appear out of nowhere and start dive bombing me and attacking me. We had an infestation of bees come into our garage, which was scary. There's no bees out here. It was just really, really scary. And then, long story short, she came home from work one day. I noticed something was wrong with her. She started talking like she was having a stroke. And I asked her, are you feeling okay? She says, well, my mouth hurts. So, well, you better go to the dentist. You probably have a chipped tooth or a filling came out or something. Well, she went to the dentist, and he said, no, I'm going to send you to a ear, nose, and throat specialist, ASAP. There's something going on there. Well, she ended up having squamous cell carcinoma of the tongue. And I want to tell you, it came on like gangbusters in just a matter of a few weeks. Now, she was the healthiest person I knew on the face of the earth. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, no history of cancer in her family. Bam, she's got her whole tongue now has become one massive tumor. Jeez. She couldn't even swallow water or talk. That spread to her thyroid, and it became medullary thyroid cancer also, which is the rarer of the two. There's no cure for medullary, and it spreads, which it did. It spread to all these lymph nodes in her throat, and that developed another form of throat cancer, and they were just positive she wasn't going to make it. And I'm talking about, it was brutal. Mm-hmm. She had a feeding tube in for well over a year, and went through 35 straight treatments of radiation right into her face. Ugh. And 8 weeks of chemo, which almost killed her. They had to stick her in isolation ward for a few weeks in the hospital. But for the most part, I took care of her here at home. And one night, she just looked like, I honestly thought I was going to wake up in the morning lying next to a dead woman. Mm-hmm. And so I took a page out of my mother's book, and I went to this all-night prayer chapel around the corner, and I crawled on my hands and knees from the front door to the altar, threw myself down on the altar and at the mercy of God, and I just asked him to please spare her life, whatever it took, and that I would continue to fight this battle, whatever it took. And funny story, well, not funny, but I had a good friend that I grew up with. We've known each other since we were children, and he moved back east. And he was on his deathbed with advanced colon cancer, and shortly before he died, and he was an atheist. Shortly before he died, he called me on the phone and told me, I just wanted you to know that I just saw God, and he told me that Sharon is going to live, and that you need to continue to fight against those responsible for all of this. So that was my bolt of lightning that struck me into, that's what this is all about. If there was any doubt prior to that, I know now that's what this is all about. So 5 years later, yes, did the oncology doctor, the radiation doctor, her ear, nose, and throat surgeon who went in and did many surgeries on her, did they save her life? Absolutely. Absolutely they did. But was there over the top, beyond a shadow of a doubt, extreme divine intervention also that helped save her life? Absolutely.
Wow.
So, because she's as stubborn as she is, she's still working cases with me, and it can be scary because they're right in my ear all the time telling me what they're going to do to her and how much worse it's going to be if we continue to do the kind of work that we do. But we, at this point now, we wouldn't have it any other way because neither one of us fear death. She's a certified Stephen minister through the Lutheran Church. We both know we're going to see each other in the next life, and we're both going to the same place. So we're not afraid of that. But that's why we, many times, more times than not, we just work cases together. Because I don't want to be responsible for bringing anybody else in on cases like that and have those types of things happen to them. That would crush me spiritually.
You kind of answered the question I had, and that was that vulnerability. And that's, I think when it comes to a demonologist or when it comes to someone who deals with spiritual ministry work, there is always some sort of vulnerability. And that's what the demonic wants to prey on, is some sort of vulnerability. And, when you talk to, it doesn't matter who you talk to, and I'm pretty close with John Zaffis, and one of the things that, he talks about, we've talked in the past, and he said, if you're going to get into this line of work, you probably don't want to have a wife or kids or anything like that, because it is a vulnerability. But for you to have your wife in that line of work and fighting right beside you, I got to commend you, because that's putting the person you treasure the most in the world, in the universe, right there. You're putting your heart on the line every single time you go on a case. I think I'd be, it would drive me up a wall if that were thrown in front of me every single time. That's an incredible test, Sean.
Absolutely, yeah. But she wouldn't have it any other way. She won't let me walk out the door by myself. So it is what it is. But like I said, at this point, I can't imagine working a case without her. We can walk into a place and she can just look at me and say, we might as well just come back another time, because it's just going to be quiet all night. I'm telling you now, it's going to be quiet all night. How she knows, I don't know. But I'm stubborn too, and I'll go, well, let's just hang out for a few hours and see. We don't do religious provocation, or my training is to not encourage dialogue with demons. We just are there to experience and then decide how to proceed. But our presence is provocation enough. So a lot of the demonologists that practice religious provocation, if it works for them, God bless them. I pray for them, but that doesn't work for me. I don't like to do that. Poke the bear, so to speak. So, she'll be right. Several hours later, nothing happens. We go home, or we walk into a place, and she looks at me and says, well, I absolutely feel like I'm walking through soup or pudding right now. Put your seatbelts on. It's going to be, we're going to remember this night. And sure enough, she's right. It'll just be one thing after another, and we're just bouncing off the walls and trying to make sense of what's happening and try and, record whatever evidence we can or experience whatever we can experience and figure out once again, figure out how we're going to proceed. And so that's her gift, and I cherish that gift. But it didn't happen overnight. I mean, my attack, I actually quit the biz for about 1.5 years until a pastor friend of mine worked a case that needed my help, and she begged me on her hands and knees to come and help her work this case. But I was retired at the time after my attack. My attack was so frightening. I used to tell my wife, I can't believe you're still willing to do this after what you've been through, which was probably worse than what I went through. But here I am, scared to go on because of my attack. And I felt, to be honest with you, I felt a little ashamed. But it was that case that brought me back through my friend who was a pastor that turned that all around. I had a vision of the Holy Spirit at that case, which was a clear sign to me that they had my back, not to fear. And then right after that was a pretty intense exorcism case. And on that case, I actually found myself transported to Calvary and saw a vision of Christ on the cross at a crucial moment when I honestly thought we were just about to lose, and I was going to watch this kid just get drugged to hell. And that happened. And so it's kind of like, I don't want to make light of it. It's like that scene in Godfather 3, just when you think you're out, they drag me back in. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like that. You just kind of realize, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to do this, and you just keep going. You just keep going.
Well, let me ask you what happened with your attack. Let's cover that. What happened with your attack?
Well, what's unusual about that whole situation, and I argue with my colleagues about it all the time, I think it was a pack of demons. Okay. Many of my colleagues disagree with me. I think I was the one singled out from the very beginning through my wife's attack to ultimately be the one that was going to come under attack. I think I was the target all along. Some of them disagree, and that's okay. But I worked 9 demonic cases in a row after my wife's attack. Mm-hmm. There must have been a reason for that. And everybody, in all these cases, the common denominator was every client knew each other, either professionally or personally. And I was the one working every single case. Mm-hmm. So about 6 cases in, it's the coworker of one of my team members who's having some issues in her home. And it's just her sister, sitting on a couch in a living room. We're in the pitch dark, and I'm walking down her hallway towards her master bedroom because I hear noises back there. But in the pitch black, I can see standing in the doorway something that's even darker than the dark. I can clearly see it. Something blacker than the black, darker than the dark, standing in the hallway. Before I had a chance to react, it's on me. And I couldn't move, I couldn't scream, I couldn't breathe. It felt like a giant had grabbed me with his hand, and actually I felt the sensation of being bent over backwards, like my back was snapping, and it felt like I was airborne, but I can't see anything. That's just my feeling. I can't adequately articulate in words the smell, and I do know that it just sounded like I was listening to thousands and thousands of souls just moaning and groaning in agony and pain. And I thought, this is it. I'm dying. I'm being drugged to hell. I don't know how much time passed by, but I heard a voice, and it sounded like my mentor at the time. She had a way to do remote viewing, and she had a gift where she knew people that she loved close to her when they were in danger, especially with the demonic. And she says it might have been me, but I think it was my guardian angel sounding like her so that I would recognize the voice and do exactly what it said. And the words said to me were exactly this: pray, dummy, pray. And the only prayer I could think to pray was the Our Father, and I probably said it 50 times at that moment. And all of a sudden I woke up, and now I'm in the master bedroom on my back, staring straight up at the ceiling. Don't know how I got there. Don't know what's about to happen next, but when I sit up, I realized that I had urinated and defecated in my pants.
Mm.
Now, that hadn't happened to me since I was a little boy.
Right.
So I knew something so horrific reached down into my very soul and scared me so bad. Maybe I did die. And my body let go. I don't know. But it was scary. It was embarrassing. I took my jacket off. I tied it around my waist. And I called it a night. I walked out. I told the two young ladies on the couch that, you know, I was done for the evening. I captured whatever I think I would have captured, or I didn't capture what I didn't capture, but I was going to go home and review evidence. I recommended they go and sleep at the other sister's home. Don't bring the kids back for, you know, a few days because it was the kids that were under attack. And I left with no intentions on coming back. I referred them to another team, and I quit. I came home and told my wife I'm done. And I didn't work another case for about a year until my phone rang, and it was a friend of mine who was a pastor begging me to help her on this one case. And she had to call me several times and really beg to get me to go back because I wasn't going to go. But then my wife started in on me. You know, if I could do it, you could do it. You know you're meant to do this. Don't show fear and back down now, especially when a friend of yours, a pastor, is calling you for help. You got to do this. So
you do release at the time of death. I mean, you know, your bodily functions do release at the time of death, and that, I don't know why that keeps hitting me upside the head. Like at the time of physical death, you do release, which makes me think that maybe for a short time you might have come out of your body and went back in. I don't know why I think that.
Something happened there. Something happened there that was psychologically and spiritually, I was done. That I couldn't. I checked out because I couldn't handle what was happening. And, you know, I don't even think I ever went back and asked how long. I know I was telling this story to a friend of that young lady who I worked her case. Ultimately, everything was fine. They ultimately moved out of that home. After my attack, many of my clients had no issues anymore, which I also find odd. Not odd. Now I firmly believe I was the one that was targeted from the very beginning, and it went right through my wife first. But I never asked how long was I gone. She heard me telling the story to a friend of hers, and she contacted me. She said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that had happened to you in my home. I'm so sorry. You should have said something before you left." And I apologized and said I couldn't. One, I was embarrassed. One, I was scared to death. Two, I didn't know how to process what had just happened to me. And I was freaked out, and I said I just wanted to get out of there, and I wanted you guys to get out of there, and the rest is history. But after my attack was over, everybody else's, all their issues stopped. And
and it's just intuitive as I sit here and I process it and I think about it. If you didn't, you say it was your guardian angel that told you to pray. I'm thinking maybe it was something, it might have been a little higher. I don't know what or who or how was telling you to pray, but maybe something higher on the totem pole was giving you the advice to pray or was throwing you a lifeline. I think maybe at that point, I don't know, Reverend Sean, I think maybe at that point you might have been out of body, and I think you were kind of slammed back into your body. I think you're onto something when you say you might have died and come back. Do you feel like at that point, and I have to ask you this question as a follow-up, do you feel like at that point, and I know you were in shock when you came out of there, did you feel like even in the days afterwards, like you had physically changed, like something, not just the fear, but like something had changed with you physically?
I'm not sure. I do know that psychologically, yes. I was afraid to go outside. I was afraid to go to work. I was afraid to be around people. Very jumpy. A car go by and backfire. I'm jumping out of my skin. I'm seeing things. Dark shadows around the house, and I'd already got. We'd already been through that battle here in the home. I thought my home was clear. So here I am, blessing and exercising my home just about every other day after that happened, to try and, seal the place up. I'm blessing my water system outside, putting blessed metals on the water faucets and the hoses and spraying my home down and my yard down of holy water and just, went back in my rabbit hole for a while and decided, okay, well, this is where I'm going to make my stand. Because I felt it was going to come back. Whatever had attacked me, I thought probably isn't done with me and it's going to come back. Mm-hmm. Don't know where or when, but I have to try my best to be ready. I even talked to my wife about possibly moving in with her daughter for just a little while so that if that was the case, when it showed up, it would only find me home. Mm-hmm. But she wouldn't have it. She wasn't leaving.
Did you receive any contact from the other side, from heaven, from God, from angels, from anything reassuring you that you were protected, that the other side, or that malevolent spirits or that demons were not going to touch you again, that you were protected, that you were reassured that it wasn't going to happen again?
Not for a while. Like I said, I still went to church, went to confession, went to Mass, received Holy Communion, did a lot of praying, tried to be the very best version of myself I could be every day. But like I said, I walked away for about a year. So during that year, no. And it wasn't until I went back and worked that case with my pastor friend and had a vision of the Holy Spirit that changed it all around for me. Once again, I didn't know how to wrap my head around that. I got home before my friend got home. I called her on the phone. She actually pulled over on the side of the freeway, and I hear all this weird noise. And I asked her, what are you doing? She says, I'm outside of my car dancing around it. I don't care if I get hit by a car. She says, I'm a pastor, and, we all pray that we would have, visions like that. And I call you in on this case, and you're the one that has the vision. So, and then I just let loose. I just started crying, and I knew that, that was it. That was a good turning point to me. And it's a good thing that happened when it did, mm-hmm. because I want to say in less than a week later, I received a call. And I hadn't been receiving any calls for a while. Mm-hmm. Boom, I receive a call from a woman, a single mother, who's convinced that her son's already possessed and needs some help. And I go, okay, well, here we go. Sharon was sick. She was really sick at the time. There were cases I worked because I take all that back. There were cases I had to work without her when she was really sick. But she was sick on that particular night that I went over to that woman's house and went to battle for this child, and that came on like gangbusters, this situation, which is also unusual. I mean, it came on within, I want to say, 48 hours. From the first time he saw something following him home to the time his mother saw something in the home, 48 hours later, he's barricaded in his bedroom, tried to kill his older brother. And this is a young kid, 10, 11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
He's barricaded in his bedroom. No one can get in there, and that's when I show up. So I believe that it was all meant to be, and everything happened for a reason.
Well,
and then it was on that case that I came under attack again. See, these things know. Well, all we need to do now, he's shot, psychologically, spiritually, physically, he's shot. All we need to do is even, make him think he's going to come under attack again and he's going to go running. And perhaps that would have been the case had I not worked the case with my pastor friend, because I came under attack at that home. And I fell to my knees, and I lost some time there. Don't know how much time I lost. But when I woke up from I first thought I had been mugged.
Okay.
That this was all a setup, and somebody hit me in my head. Because when I woke up, I was in the desert. And now try to wrap your mind around that. You're standing in a bedroom 1 second. The next second, you wake up and you're on your knees and you're in the desert. Well, that's when a shadow came over me from my right side. And I looked over, and everything, I mean, I haven't been separated from the church, but when I look at a crucifix now, I always look at the feet, because when I saw Jesus on the cross, his left foot was over his right. And he didn't even look like we were taught he looks like on the cross. He just looked like a battered, mutilated piece of meat hanging on a tree, to be honest.
Okay.
And all I could think to do at that moment was to crawl on my hands and knees and first touch the cross to see if it was real.
Okay.
And it was. And then I used the cross to help myself up. And I got on my tippy toes to kiss him on his left foot. And I remember tasting the dry blood and dirt and mud off of his foot in my mouth. And then it all changed around. I was back in the bedroom. I turned around. I see the young kid. And it was like something just took over me and guided me through the rest of what I needed to do to get that child out of that room and not necessarily bring closure, but to immediately stop what was happening, because the kid looked like he was 100. He was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. He looked like he was 100 years old, sitting Indian style in the corner of a room. And beyond him, when I was in that, having that vision of Calvary, I could see that beyond him, down a trail, we were like up on a little bit of a hill. I could see what appeared to be black cloaked figures and some black dogs, which that's a whole other story. I confronted these black dogs on a case with an elderly couple, and they're a very real thing. You hear people talk about, being under demonic infestation and seeing these odd-looking black dogs that look like a cross between a shepherd and a hyena.
Okay.
Yeah, those are very real. I saw those, and I just knew that if something dramatic didn't happen at that moment, I would never get that child out of that bedroom. So it did. I just basically went over to, exorcism. It's on the fly. Sometimes it's not like it's in the movies. Sometimes it's just like it is in the movie, not as over-dramatic and sensationalized. I've only seen levitation once, and it was just while the girl was in a wheelchair, and the wheelchair came off the ground about a foot. But it wasn't like you see in The Exorcist, or at least I haven't experienced that. But I just got on my knees in front of this child and pretty much doused him with anointing oils and holy water. And here you go again. I must have said the Our Father. I threw some Hail Marys in there and some prayers to St. Michael, short version in English, until we were back in the bedroom. And he looks like a child again. And I just grabbed him, and we got out of the room. Now, interesting thing was, he was barricaded in his room. He actually took his double bunk bed and shoved it up against his wall, and I couldn't get in the room. I don't know how he did that. He definitely wasn't the one that did that. And it took me quite a bit of old football training to get that door open, just enough for me to be able to slip through and get into the bedroom.
Okay.
So it was quite an experience. But I remember walking down the stairs with him. His mother's down there, and we never said another word about it. It's like we all knew something miraculous had just happened. We never said a word. We all sat down at the table. The only thing I could think to say was, is anybody hungry? How about I order a pizza? And I remember ordering a pizza at a Papa John's just down the street, and we waited for it to be delivered. We had dinner. We talked, and the following day, the mother got her other son back from a neighbor's house, and they packed up and left and went to L.A. to live with the family. They even left Vegas, which was the wise thing. I think her background was very Creole, Cajun, from Louisiana, had a lot of background of voodoo and southern voodoo and things of that nature in her family. I think there was some type of transgenerational curse there or attachment that she brought with her that went after her son. Phenomenal, as bad as things were, to have it end the way it did. I'm not going to say I feel untouchable. I don't feel untouchable.
Right.
But I don't really fear what's going to happen to me when this journey's over. I'm not fearful of what the next journey's going to bring.
Let me backtrack with you, Reverend Sean, for just a moment. When you're in that room and you start to have that vision with Jesus on the cross, you mentioned that he looked more like a piece of meat when he was hanging there. I've got to ask you at that point, how do you know? Because, the demonic has a way of tricking you, of making you think that you're seeing one thing when it could be something else. How do you know in that point, at that time, that that's really Jesus there, that's hanging there on that cross?
Well, everything, including the demonic and Christ and the Holy Spirit and God, they're all knowing. So they know you better than you know yourself, and they already know what's in your mind. And it's funny you bring that up. You and I, Tim, must be a little bit psychically in tune here. And I'm giving you the abridged version here because I know that we're not going to be on a whole lot longer. But when I got to the cross, I had a vision of a time when I was a young boy on my way home from school, and we had 3 bullies. I was in grade school. These guys probably just graduated out of high school, and they were, if I remember correctly, either brothers or close enough they could be like brothers, but they terrorized the neighborhood, and they were capable of chasing a kid home and beating him to within an inch of his life and taking whatever he had of value on him. They were scary kids. And I remember on my way home from school, and I grew up in Colts Neck, New Jersey.
Okay. These
bullies were waiting for me, maybe not waiting for me, but they saw me and they started chasing me home. And I ran and ran and ran, and I remember being so frightened. I'm running and running and running. My father at the time worked at a company which was about a 2.5-hour drive from home. And I was lucky if I saw him before I went to school, and I was lucky to see him by the time I went to bed. Now, on this particular day, I am just about to be pounced on. I'm running across the street, and the car that almost hits me coming home at this weird, odd hour that he never comes home at is my father. Mm-hmm. He almost hits me, and to miss me, he has to veer, which almost hits the kids, the other 3 boys. He slams on his brakes. He gets out of the car. He doesn't even have to ask me what's going on. You know when you're a kid and you're so scared and you're crying so hard you can't even catch your breath and talk?
Oh, yes. Yep.
That's what I'm doing. My mouth is open. Nothing's coming out. And I'm just standing there. It would be TMI and inappropriate for me to tell you what my father did to these 3 guys.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I never forgot that. And that's the vision I had when I was holding onto the cross. As if Christ already knew I needed assurance that that's exactly what was happening at that time, because that was exactly what was happening. My Father was coming to rescue me.
Okay.
I tied that all in together, and it's miraculous how all that works. Just sitting here telling you the story, it's just miraculous to me how all of that works. We're so not in control.
Mm-hmm.
You and I,
Right.
This is all so much, oh my God. You and I are going to have, I don't drink anymore. This business stopped me from drinking because I used to be a raging alcoholic, and I decided, once again, I went to church, got on my knees, and prayed to God. Said, if you're all powerful and you can stop me from drinking and doing drugs, I don't want to wake up tomorrow morning and ever have another drink or do any cocaine or smoke any pot or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up the next morning, and this has been, 8 years now, nothing. Not even a desire for anything.
Wow.
So I wanted to stop. I'm seeing such crazy things and experiencing such crazy things. The first question people ask you, well, were you on drugs? Were you drinking? I want to be able to emphatically look at people and say, absolutely not. Could I still be a crazy man? Absolutely. I could be a crazy man. That's why once every couple of months I sit down and have a nice hour or two long talk with a childhood buddy of mine who's a clinical certified psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
I have another friend of mine who's a psychiatrist. Every few months we sit down for a couple hours over a cup of coffee or two and talk so that they can tell me when the conversation's over, you're okay. You're okay.
Right.
Because after a while, this work can make you doubt that at times, and you can't have that doubt. You absolutely can't have that doubt. But one day, Tim, you and I are going to be on the other side, sitting at that big pub in heaven, throwing back a pint of some Guinness and laughing about all of this and going, "Wow, if we had known then what we know now," because it's just all so miraculous and also so bigger than us. It's just every day I wake up, I know it doesn't really matter what's going to happen to me today. It's going to be miraculous because they already know and I don't know. So it is.
Let me ask you this question, Reverend Sean, and I don't know why this question pops up in my head, but why do you feel like on this plane of Earth that humans get tested or challenged with such a burden as demonic possession? That seems like such a test on a soul that it's such an overbearing burden that I can't imagine that would be something that a creator like God would want to put us through something like that.
Well, he gave them the ability to do that. I believe that this is, we all have free will, and if we're going to make conscious decisions to do things that are going to attract the attention of the demonic, then that's our decision, and then it's what we do. It's what decisions we make after we're, under that type of assault or attack that matter. And it's not so much he's allowing to do it, but I believe this is hell. And once we're done on this journey, we will go to heaven. But while we're down here, we're in their realm, and they can pretty much do whatever they want to do. But it's the people that draw that attention. The scariest thing right now, I find, is that a lot of exorcists that I talk to believe that there's something beyond full possession, and it's now being called complete integration, where that the possession has gone on so long and unnoticed and untreated that eventually that vessel completely gets taken over by the invading spirit, and the original soul that inhabited that vessel gets pushed out. So now you've got a living, eating, drinking, walking, talking demon. And that's why you have things like here in Vegas, we have the gentleman that opens, up with automatic weapons on 300 concert goers across the street, at a country western concert.
Right.
I truly believe that's demonic and that's evil. That's not just, a mentally ill person that decides to do that. That's calculated. And that's what I think, it's not so much that God, but, to answer your question, yes, God does allow some of that to happen because I do believe there's lessons to be learned, and there's things good. There is some good that comes out of that. In Him allowing some of that to happen, because of course, yes, He's all powerful, and the rest of them are fallen angels that are cast down here. But it's all part of warfare. Battles and wars are being fought all the time that we can't even see, and we're pawns in that. We are created in God's image, so 24/7 we are a reminder to the demonic of what they despise. And you can't even imagine the severity and the level of the hatred that these creatures have for us. It's unimaginable, and you can't even fathom it. They're actually just psychopathic murderers, for lack of a better term. And as their leader is Satan. He was created by God in God's image also, almost like God, very powerful, sat on the throne next to his creator, and then they tried to murder him and take over heaven, and had a legion that followed him. And then they were all defeated by St. Michael and cast down to hell. And I believe that's what Earth is. I think this is their realm. And oh my gosh, that's a question that I could probably do a series of shows on, but I do think He allows some of that stuff to happen because some good, I believe, comes out of all of that.
Okay. I tell you, Reverend Sean, it's been and really we've kind of scratched the surface of things today. It's an intriguing topic, the topic of the paranormal and where spiritual warfare comes in. Again, I encourage people to check out your podcast and tell people where they can check out your podcast and your radio show.
The Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, live for 1 hour, televised from my actual office here, and I live in a haunted home, is Reverend Sean Whittington's Paranormal Ministry, and that's on the spiritrealm.net, and it's also simulcast on the Spirit Realm Network Facebook Live page. And then Monday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, live for 2 hours is a radio show called Vegas Supernatural, and that's on KCORradio.com. And I just celebrated my 4-year anniversary there. Started the Paranormal Ministry on the spiritrealm.net in October of this year. Hopefully I have as good a run. I enjoy doing both of them. And it's just like what you did with me tonight. I bring on a guest, and we talk about all things paranormal and take call-ins, have chat line, and we have a chat room and all that good stuff.
All right. In the future, Reverend Sean, we'll have to bring you back, and we'll talk about individual demonic cases. We'll talk about some paranormal cases as well.
You know what I would like to say real quick, Tim?
Sure.
Do me a big favor. When you see Dave,
yes,
congratulate him for me on his new show. I love his new show.
Oh, yeah, I will.
I hope he's feeling better. I know he was feeling ill before an event in Chicago just recently. I hope he's feeling better.
Yep.
But I want everybody to know if they purchase a copy of God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, you can get autographed copies through my website. You can also get it at Amazon. But part of the proceeds of every sale goes to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, Nevada, and that is a very good thing.
Oh,
and
right.
So that's some of their money goes to that, and
we'll have
this time of year especially is important.
Absolutely. And we'll have a link to that book. And the book is God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, a supernatural and spiritual autobiography by Reverend Sean Whittington. We'll have a link to that on our page, and we'll have a link on the description of this podcast that you can follow to get a copy of Reverend Sean's book. And again, like you mentioned, Reverend Sean, proceeds from that book will go to St. Jude there in Las Vegas, correct?
Correct.
All right, that's a great cause, and that's greatly appreciated. St. Jude does some awesome work.
Oh,
so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that's so good of you to do. I love St. Jude, and we've worked before for iHeartRadio, who St. Jude is one of their main charities that they donate to. So we're quite familiar with St. Jude as well. So I think that'll do it for today. Again, Reverend Sean Whittington, want to thank you very much for joining us today on today's program. And again, we'll have to have you back. We'll talk more about some different paranormal cases and some spiritual warfare cases as well. How does that sound?
Absolutely, brother. I love you, Tim. You're on the prayer list, and I'll be praying for you.
Appreciate you. Love you as well. Thank you very much, Reverend Sean. That'll do it for today. Thank you very much for joining us this weekend, folks. We'll be back again next weekend with supernatural news and another great guest. For Dave Schrader, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you very much, folks, for joining us again for another great weekend here on the best in paranormal talk radio. This has been Beyond the Darkness.